Welcome everybody. Hopefully you had a nice lunch. We have to work harder to get more regenerative products into places like this. So, I just realised that I hadn't changed the title on that slide. I picked it up from another slide, but this is sort of what I wanted to go through today. I suppose Hannah asked me to talk because I'm not just a farmer, but also an educator, and I'll pick up the term from today, a guide in this. So I thought I'd sort of take you through my why and where I've come from and the journey I've taken, because it's a little bit different to a lot of people that I've heard. You know, a lot of people have a bit of a revelation, something crisis happens and they come to regenerative agriculture or a change in their practices, they're changing their thinking through having to deal with something that's happened to them. Mine's probably been a bit more of a slow burn over a long, long period of time. So that slow burn started, well, with my father and my grandfather. My grandfather, I didn't know him very well. He died when I was young, but I saw newspaper clippings of him with DPI in paddocks, you know, testing new red clovers and things like that. He was on the central tablelands around Blaney. And he was always on the cutting edge of trying to do something a bit different. And then when I was at high school, I went to an ag high school, went to Farah, and I think that was one of the very fortunate things for me, is that I had 6 years of agriculture. And the things I learnt while I was at school, even now when I look back on it, you know, I learned about ruminant nutrition at school when I was in high school. But between having that exposure and then having my dad then start to look at things a bit differently, and we started looking at keyline and a few other things, had me thinking in a different way. So that when I got to HSC level of my ag, my 3-unit ag project was looking at residual levels of phosphorus in soil and whether we had to keep putting on superphosphate in the tablelands. Because for me, I'm just sort of going, well, this doesn't make sense. Something in me just went, there's got to be a better way. In doing a bit of research for this talk, I was looking for a particular thing, and I found, and I've got it in here, an assignment from first year university. This was the first time that I used the term regenerative agriculture in 1990. And I'd forgotten about it. And it wasn't until I pulled this out. And I remember the topics. I remember at the time looking at sustainable agriculture, because that was the catchphrase. I remember doing my HSC and having to write essays about sustainable agriculture. And I'm going, this doesn't work. Like, we can't just keep sustaining something. It's just not going to work. And so this was May of 1990, so 34 years ago to this month, that I wrote this assignment about whether sustainable agriculture was what we should be doing. And I actually said, no, we need to do more. We need to be regenerating ecosystems. We need to take it to the next step. So the next part of what I did in continuing that thinking, when I did my 4th year thesis, I did it on keyline farming. I looked at keyline farming and the economic analysis of it to say, well, here's a system that actually talks about rebuilding soil fertility, rebuilding soil biology, but yet no one was doing it. And I'm going, well, hang on, there's got to be a reason. And so I wrote a paper looking at how it could be economically viable, or whether it was, and found that it was. But I also wrote it in a way at the time that I had an aim when I started that to be able to have farmers read it. So if you've ever read a lot of scientific papers, they're not very conducive to actually reading it and consuming the information. It's the people who take that and then disseminate it out. So I wrote this in a way, and I got knocked back on my mark because of it, but I wanted it to be used. And interestingly enough, about 3 years after I left uni, I was sitting across the desk with a guy having a job interview, and we got talking about stuff, and he goes, do you know I know who you are? I went, what? He says, yeah, I've read your thesis. And I went, what? He said, this is pre a lot of electronic stuff. There's 4 copies of my thesis, and I thought I knew where they all were. But apparently not. So it was this first time where I said, well, I've actually written something with a purpose, and it's gone out in, and I've got that information out. But the keyline farming, I think the thing that I'll just emphasise here is that this is out of my dissertation, that we're looking at increasing organic matter, we're combining it with strict grazing practices. So one of the things I found in my research when I was doing it is I actually went and visited P.A. Yeoman's properties in Richmond and a couple of others, and had the opportunity to, in one case, talk to a guy who was the farm manager on one of the properties. And what's not in the books was what they did with grazing management. And what I found was they were doing rotational grazing. They were doing a recovery-based grazing management in conjunction with the other work they're doing. PA being an engineer, focused on the engineering stuff, but still included all the other stuff in the way they managed. And the other thing is that it was, looking at the soil macro and microbiology. We were building soil, we were building that livestock, as Cam said, that livestock under the ground that we're doing it. So, that was the things I was trying to emphasise back then. So, that's where I was then. When I went to uni, my aim was to be a consultant. My dad was only 20 years older than me, and so he was actively farming our farm, and there wasn't a great opportunity at that time for me to come back, and I went, well, I want to be a consultant. So I looked at a couple of consultants that I knew, and one of them, Ross Turvey, who's still around, he's actually a financial counsellor up at the Lismore area. I'd done some work experience with him, and he started in the bank, so I went, okay. Middle of the recession we had to have, left uni, trying to find a job, and so got a job with National Australia Bank in their business finance area. So that's where I sort of started my career and went into finance and money at that stage. Over the years and through various things, but I've done a number of different things. But at that time, my parents did the Grazing for Profit school, and they did a holistic management course within a couple of years. And they joined Executive Link, which is the sort of the peer advisory part of what RCS do after you do the first course. And I just saw how powerful it was and what it had done for them at the time. And I went, I want to work for them. It took another 4 years for that to happen. But I set my why. I said, I want to do, this is the thing I want to do. I want to be able to take what I've already been thinking and then be able to actually help apply this to farmers across. And I saw someone who was doing that and went, yep, want to do that. It took 4 years before I got a tap on the shoulder and went and worked for RCS for a number of years. And then when my kids were young, we decided that living in suburbia of Brisbane, which is where I was at the time, in the northern suburbs where it was around Caboolture and Bray Park and Strathpine, it was not the greatest. We went, well, we were going to go back to family. And so we thought, well, family is actually somewhere. We had 2 young kids and we want them to grow up with their grandparents. So we moved back home. So part of our why came through is saying, well, we want that for us. We had it for ours. So I grew up with my nana, and every year we'd go to Broken Hill and in the summer holidays in the middle of Western New South Wales and see my other grandparents, my mum's parents. But it was something we wanted for our kids. So we moved back to Armidale. And so at that time, opportunities to continue what I was doing changed, and so I went into a whole variety of different entrepreneurial ventures and wrote, and one of those you'll see on the top there, I wrote mission statements. I wrote these why, this is what I want to do, this is what I do. And when I looked at these, the values that I wrote then are still part of me now. Probably there's some missing link with what I was doing in those areas when it was in small business and it was in ecotourism and various things. And along the track, I probably lost that why. One of the things in my why was working with people. And I had an opportunity to work with a couple of guys that I'd got to know and take up, and we started a technology business. And it was about working with people that was the thing that was attracting me to it. And so we started a technology business. And I ran that for about 5 or 6 years until one partner moved away and dropped out, and the other guy got sick and passed away. So it ended up just being me running this business. And I remember going away on holidays with our family. We went on a 4-wheel drive trip down the Darling River from the Queensland border all the way down to Wentworth. And I remember the day we had the discussion. It was driving between Wilkenya and Menindee, and talking about and sort of going, running this business, dealing with everybody else's computer problems. Day in, day out, it was someone else coming to me with a problem that I had to fix. And I went, why am I doing this? What's going on? How the heck did I get here? And sort of looked at it and went, okay, well, I just sort of fell into this. And so I went, okay, well, what do I want to do? And at the time, I was doing some tourism stuff, and I went, well, I really enjoy that. And I want to get back to my agriculture. I want to get back to the stuff that was really my passion. And making that decision, within a month of that, I was actually changed jobs and closed the IT business down. One of my IT customers was a company called Quadrant Australia, who were in agriculture and tourism. They were one of my clients. And I came home and went, oh, look, and I talked to the guys and said, oh, are you interested in, I'm interested in what you're doing? He said, oh, actually, we're talking about succession. Yeah, you'd be a really good fit. And so I moved back towards agriculture. I reassessed what it was that I really wanted to be doing and had that think. And sometimes we have to sort of take that step and just stop and have a think about it. And I think it was really good questions people were asking in Tim about how do they, when do they have their discussions around this? And having it on a regular basis, I think, is really important. So that started me coming back towards my passion for farming and for regenerative agriculture, and it gave me the opportunity to do some things in that. What I wanted to share with you, I'm now an accredited holistic management educator, which means that Alan Savory's organisation has decided that I know enough about this to allow me to say his name at the bottom of things. But it came from the wealth of experience I had with RCS and working with Stan Parsons, who'd worked with Alan in Africa, and worked directly with Stan while I was with RCS and a few things, that gave me this background of knowledge that I could just go, yeah, I know this stuff. It's inherent in me, this holistic nature and the way I was thinking. So I thought, as far as sharing a why, I thought I'd share my wife and I's why. This is part of our stuff, so that you guys can see, because sometimes it's really hard to start about writing this stuff down. As someone said up there, you get emotional about it because it's about your values. It's about what's in your gut, about what's important to you. And for some people, that can be easy to do. Some of us, know that stuff, and for others, it can take some time to come to a realisation of what it is important to you. When I actually start working with people, one of the things that I do is I do personality analysis, like DISC. Has anybody done Myers-Briggs or DISC or those sorts of things? Yeah. So they're a way of you sort of getting an idea of the type of person you are, whether you're a big thinker or you're a front of the party type person, or you're a deep-house person, or you're a back of the room loving, caring sort of person. And we're all combinations of those things. But unless you have a bit of self-awareness of yourself, it's hard sometimes to really get a hone in on those values that are important to you. And once you sort of get an idea of that, you can actually take a step towards finding those important things. So for me, as you saw, I've been writing mission statements since I was at uni. But for my wife, it's a different situation. We're different personalities. We're different people. We complement each other really, really well. This opposite attract thing is around personalities, not background. So I do a lot of the probably writing of our statements, but it's a collaborative process between Lucy and I to come up with this. And we both inherently agree with this. One of the things I work with when I work with people on this, and I love the comment about being a guide, not a guru, and I'll come back to that in a minute, but I try and guide people around this, and doing something like that vision board is a really good way to start to identify your why. It's when Alan Savory developed, and if you listen to the audio book of his book on Audible, Paul Griffiths talks about how Alan came up with the concept of the holistic context, your holistic goal or your holistic vision. And when he started with people looking at their land base and what they wanted that to look like, and their community and all that sort of stuff. And started working with communities and farmers doing that, and it sort of worked, but it wasn't quite work. And it took him a while to step up back to the point of building the values that sat behind that. So if you think about that, if you go there, and that vision board there is my vision board about what I'd like my place to look like, and it's got actually our family farm in the middle of it. And then from that, you can then go, okay, well, when I look at those pictures, how does it make me feel? What is it in me that I enjoy or gives me pleasure with that? And then that helps you articulate your why. What's the thing that really lights your fire in the morning? And then the little bit on the other side there is, us sort of breaking that down into components of our life so that we can get some more specifics around, what it is. So one of those is our kids. My son's at home with us, he has a disability, and one of the reasons we live in town in Armidale is because of him, because he's got access to community and all sorts of stuff. And so it's part of our why to make sure he has a good life, because he can't make that decision for himself. So it's important for us to do that. My personal context, that's gone fast. My personal context, and comes back to why I do what I do. I really enjoy and get energy from sharing and talking and working with farmers. And there's a few people in the audience today that have come back up and that I've actually done some work with over the last little while in a small way. And it really, I come home from these things, so my wife will hate me tonight because I'll be energised and she'll be ready to relax on the beach. But it gives me energy. But when my wife and I look at our farm, our context and stuff, we have to create something that's shared together, right? And I put this up, the three-legged stool is important because people have talked about the environment and regenerative agriculture. Tim talked about finance, that's important. If that leg of that stool's not there, then the stool falls over. And our production of what we're actually doing fits that. But it's all underpinning our context, our vision, our why. Now it's interesting we used Simon Sinek's Golden Circle because I use this in my work. And the why is our quality of life statement, our holistic context statement. So that's what I just put up before. Is how do I need to live and what's really important to me. The how is the future resource base. So how do I need the people to be in my life? How do I need my community to be? What does my land need to look like to make sure that my quality of life is actually achieved? Okay? And then what we do is the businesses, the activities, the enterprises and all that sort of stuff that fits underneath it. And it's driven by the why. So if you go through it in that process, but a lot of us, what we'll find is, especially if you come from farming backgrounds, or even if you don't, you come in and you go, okay, I'm going to buy a block of land, I'm going to grow some cattle on it. And you start by looking around what everyone else is doing, and you look at what they're doing, rather than saying, well, why are they doing that? Why do I need to do it? What's the reason I'm doing it for? So I use this little link of saying, my conflict is, and that includes my vision for the future, is my holistic context and vision. And then underpinning that is my personal plans and my business and my job and all those sorts of things. And they have to actually drive that direction for me. If you're not designing your life, then someone else is going to be doing it for you. So you don't have to design it. Life will continue, but it might not be the direction that you want to go. So by sitting down and taking some time to take your step forward and where you want to go, you can create your future. So for me, a little bit of a photo collage, I'll quickly go through this. So, this is what it means to me, my why in actualisation. So starting off with my family and some relaxation stuff across this side into actually working with farmers and sharing and taking people places. So one of the great things I've been able to do is, having worked for Quadrant and the Ag Tours, is run tours. So this is me with a tour group at Polyface Farms with Joel Salatin in the paddock. And those people that went with me now are lifelong friends and mentors to me. Richard Makem, the tall guy, You know, he lives a few k's from me, and we regularly get together. He's a wealth of knowledge, you know, and he's been doing this type of work with grazing management for many, many, many years. So he lives in Armidale now. He's had a couple of properties there, but before that he had big properties up in the Gulf country. And he's been part of carbon sequestration projects up in that country quite a while ago now. And the unfortunate thing about him being involved with that is he was so successful in it that when the scientists put the data together, his farm had done so well that it was an outlier. And they went, that's statistically insignificant. We'll take it out of the data. So instead of turning around and going, hang on, what's this guy doing that we could do elsewhere? They went, no, statistically not significant, we'll exclude it. So yeah, Richard Acid. The other photo there, that's David Pratt with the orange cap. So David worked with Stan Parsons in the US with Ranch Management Consultants, and we're on one of the, one of their client places up in Northern California. Jeff Moyer at that time was working at the Rodale Institute. I think he actually might be still working there. So he wrote a book called Organic No-Till Farming, and Jerry Benetti, unfortunately, who has passed away, you know, some of these guys. These are what I call gurus. I try, and I think my ego wanted initially me to be a guru, but now my context says I'm a guide. You know, I like working with people, and I had a client this last week go, okay, so how much is it going to cost me to do a plan for my farm? And I went, well, it doesn't work that way. I'll help you create your plan. So I'll guide you through the process. But these guys, I'd say, you know, they're some of the gurus. They're the guys that really went into, like especially Jerry, later in his life, got into these links between agriculture and health. You know, and some of the stuff he came up with was amazing. Looking at Australia, you know, these are some Australian farms. I need to do some tours around this area too, because there's some great producers, you know, we've been hearing from. But just taking people and showing them ideas and getting them outside their own box and looking at about what other people are doing. But in this, we also talk about why people are doing it. So, you know, there's Sam White on this side here, you know, he's done holistic management and you know, he's one of the things we talk about when we're on his farm is his holistic context, his why and what we're doing, so that we can really expose people to that in action. And you know, working with farmers and being on our place. So our little farm, Taree farm, we bought in May of 2018. Went into winter, that's pretty much what it looked like. When we viewed the place, it was a little bit smaller than what we had originally been looking for, but we sort of looked at it and went, oh, actually there's probably opportunity here. We saw a few different grass species, went, it's not too bad. But it had been not purely set stock, but not managed rotationally, had 7 paddocks on, it's only 65 hectares and had 7 paddocks on it. It had been settled for at least 150 years, so pretty much denuded of trees that had all been chopped down and burnt and various other things, and we've got piles of logs and things that we're uncovering under blackberries still. But we went, right, we're going to have a go. So we started working, we put some sheep and cattle, we were just trading, buying in stock and growing them out at that stage, and my father-in-law generously gave us some of his cull cows, and we went, great, this will be the start of a herd, we'll get those calves. And when we started working, this is sort of some of the infiltration or lack of infiltration rates we had. This was like a 15 mil storm over about a half an hour, and all of that flowed down and off the place to the bottom dam that I couldn't use the water. It just disappeared off the farm. The picture of the fence line there is a sheep netting fence that, when I looked at that and saw that, realised that for probably 20 or 30 years that event had been happening, and every time it happened, all of the sheep dung and the litter and everything else had washed to the fence and built a dam at the fence line. So you know, this wasn't a recent occurrence, this had been happening for quite some time. So we started, you know, managing land and putting in wire and water. As someone said, you know, Tim Wright sort of saying, you know, he didn't need the biology, he put in barbed wire and troughs. So, you know, getting our grazing management and getting people to manage the land so that, and I would not have the word try for 100% ground cover. you need it. You have to have it. So do it. But this allowed us to manage the land, and we went from 7 paddocks to 33 paddocks on our place. What that gives us is opportunity. I can use 33 paddocks, or I can use 15 paddocks, or I could open a gate, or I can do wherever else, but unless I've got a fence in, I've got no choice. Then we hit the drought. That's looking across our neighbour's hill there with the dust blowing the stuff off. But even on our area, we destocked early in the year, but because of the way that the winds and things went, we lost a lot of our organic matter from the surface. So when it started to rain, and who was it, Matt, had the recovery from the drought, that rain event, we got it in around December and January, and we're at 275 millimetres of rolling rainfall. Our average is 830 at the end of December. By the end of January, we had 250 mils of rain in that month. And we went from this side here, started January, things are starting to grow, we're really starting to get stuff. I had neighbours calling me then going, can we put our cows on your paddock? And I went, no, I don't know whether it's going to keep raining. And so when it got into March, I did an assessment on the grass, and I went, well, after the last 12 months, I don't know whether this is going to continue. So I did a pasture assessment. I measured all my grass and went, if this is going to last me a year, how many cattle could I put on? And that's what I restocked at. So then I knew I was going to be able to take it through. And that's when we started to rebuild. We had a bit of millet and things that we put in, and that helped rebuild a couple of paddocks, and we did some trials with putting out some oats with compost extracts on them. At that stage I hadn't used Lee's product yet, but we were using some other product. The results of that, as well as spraying, you can see in that picture there. So I built my own little sprayer and calculated how wide I thought it was going. And then when I saw this walking across the paddock going, gee, that's a bit green there. So I chucked the drone up and went, my spray rig's not as wide as I thought it was. But the failure actually gave us a really good visual result to show us what was happening. So those paddocks went from this, which is paddock lovegrass in the late summer, and cooch and a bit of red grass, to those green strips as fescue and cocksfoot regenerating itself from the seed bank. That's cool. So people walk across that paddock now and go, well, so what varieties did you plant? And I'm going, well, I didn't plant them. They were already there. Someone else did it before me. I'm taking someone else's thought from previously and working with it. So we're getting mainly, and it's only been a couple of paddocks that we've really done that. Most of what we've done is just grazing management. And we now have 100% ground cover. We've got fungi growing everywhere. We've got dung beetles galore, although I don't necessarily want the dung beetles because I like worms underneath my cow pads and things like that. I want diversity. But it's, wire and water is the first step I say to people. So I haven't built, I've built a one channel to help dry out a road so I could drive across the paddock, but I haven't built a swale, I haven't done anything else. I've put in a fence and moved stock and created 100% ground cover. Now, we cleaned dams out in November last year. We'd had a really, really dry winter. We had like 40 mils in 5 months through winter last year. And those dams have been empty until this last month. We've had 600 millimetres of rain since I cleaned them out, and it's only now that they're filling. All that rain we got is going straight into the soil. I have to finish. So one of the things we do from the farm, I have people visiting. This is a group the other day, a group of 15, just people on an eco tour. Billy runs Al's Eco Tours, and part of what he does is he brings them to the farm and then he takes our meat and gives them dinner straight off the farm. And we talk about regenerative agriculture, and we talk about healthy food, and we talk about what we're doing so that we're sharing that knowledge so they can go back and talk to their friends and family about it. And that's another guru, Shane Joyce, You know, he's gone through holistic grazing for profit, and he's now a biodynamic teacher doing syntropic agriculture, a whole range of stuff. And that's in the middle of the drought. We were running a course on biodynamic farming on our place. So we were still, and at that time we were setting the place up ready for when the drought broke. In improving the economics of the farm, because it's only a small place, we started doing some direct selling. This is our new stand we did for Maureen on the plate just recently. And my wife this morning put stock on the truck, and I'll meet her tonight for a few days, but she put it on this month. Whenever animals leave our place, 90% of it is pre-sold with the money in the bank. So we only service our local region. We do Armidale, Guyra, Glen and Inverell, and we do pickup spots for that. And I do that deliberately because there's huge opportunity just in that area for us to create a market that I don't need to ship it outside. And if I don't ship it outside, that leaves opportunity for someone else in their own area to do it in theirs. Our next bit is we're now taking over my family farm, which is a bit bigger. It's about 2,000 hectares in total, but a lot of that timbered country, about half of it is under bushland, which we're looking at biodiversity credits and koala offsets and things that we might use for that. And we graze a valley that was naturally cleared. So it's had shepherd's huts. We've got 6 old shepherd's huts that were on our property, and they've been sending sheep over to this area for about 140 years because it was an open, natural woody grassland, and it still remains that way. I'm now working a lot more with other educators, holistic management co-op and various things. So recently up in central Queensland in the desert uplands on the other side there. And then this one's working with New Zealand Wool and their ZQRX program in getting wool producers regenerative farming so that we can have products that we can put on our backs from that. I like Charles Massey's sort of definition of regenerative agriculture, but I added on to it that he talks about enables landscapes to renew themselves. And I liked, that we're actually regenerating people and communities in this process. We've got to think holistically. We've got to think past our front gate. We've got to think beyond the soil to our whole system. And I don't know whether everybody saw this. This is David Marsh. So that was from, 1983 to 2019. The Utes in the same place. And all that changed was with what happened between his ears. One of my really good favourite quotes, in nature there's neither rewards nor punishments, but there are consequences. Nature doesn't tell you you did it wrong, but something's going to happen. So we just need to keep mindful of that and work out and monitor what's happening as we make our changes. So, thank you.